Welcome back to the Movie Well Marathon. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Mac.
Yeah, and we are on another episode for our obscure fantasy movie marathon. We are on the NeverEnding
Yeah.
Story, directed by Wolfgang Peterson. That's a pretty cool name.
What a name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
narrated by Alan Oppenheimer. Another cool name. Came out July 20th, 1984, starring who we got? Noah Hathaway as Atreyu, Barrett Oliver as Bastion. Is it Bo or Bucks? Because it's got the Bux.
I don't know.
Tammy Stronach as the childlike Empress. I don't remember seeing any other Empress. And of course a bunch of other folks. We got a whole array of creatures and such in here, but those are like the main ones that we really deal with. I want to see if I can find the dragon. But I'm not. Oh, yeah, here we go.
The dragon's name is Falcor.
Yeah, Georges Aminal is Falcor. So yeah, the never-ending story. Twist.
No.
Mac. Twist.
Twist?
I actually like this one. I like this one a lot.
Hey!
It's the first one of this marathon
we
where
have a winner!
I found myself. I was fully sucked in, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool."
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I have gone through phases with this movie, and I have landed this time on, yeah, this actually was a really cool creative story that I appreciate. But I learned some things that I feel like, I don't know, there's more for me to discover in the NeverEnding Story world, because apparently, obviously, this was a book first. To me, that was obvious. But anyway, it was a book first written by a guy named Michael End, I believe. There's an E on the end of his name, End, so it might be ND or something like that. I don't know. End. And apparently he worked with Wolfgang Peterson to, like, on a draft of this that included the whole plot of the book, and he was pretty happy with it. And then when he found out that things had changed, because this only really covers apparently like the first half or so of the book, and they just kind of like tacked on an end to it, which dramatically changes sort of like the message of the story, I guess. I'm finding all this out just by reading up on it a little bit. But basically, he tried to get the movie to shut down because he disliked how different it was from the book. And it kind of seems like he might get his way kind of in the end, because like the movie came out, and I do think the movie's pretty good. We just said that. But I guess there's a production company called Michael End Production Company that got the rights in 2024 to create a film series more accurate to the book.
Okay, that'd be dope.
I would be totally down for all that. I also feel like I now have to read the book because, of course.
That's a different book club. Yeah, we'll do that later.
But all that aside, I do really like what they ended up doing. So if what they ended up doing is a shallow version of what's already in the book, I am very curious as to what the book has to say.
I think this is the first of the ones we've watched in this marathon that actually like genuinely steps into it's cool and like genuinely becomes dramatic. They're not perfect, but like nothing is, which is fine. But like I would watch this again. I think the makeup and the special effects are really dope. The rock monster is incredible. I love that. He's amazing. The little elf astronomer tinkerer guy that Atreyu meets later on is great. A strange array of creatures that are there when the Empress declares what can save her. Her little help does. Awesome, wild. Honestly, the only one I really don't like is the dragon. I think it looks dumb, but that's just me. That's just me.
It's so funny. No, it's so funny because I have a note in here somewhere. This has been my opinion since I saw the dragon. I was like, the luck dragon design is a dragon only loosely and kind of only because I gave it a pass, simply because I love Falcor. The personality of the dragon, thumbs up. I love Falcor the character. The design of Falcor, we could do better. We can do better.
I don't like the weird fluffy white dog dragon look. I'm not feeling it. But the rest of the stuff is awesome. There's one bit of this movie I've seen on the internet, not like the scene, but the pictures of the scene, and it was when the horse dies in the swamp, and
Mm-hmm.
the sentiment is always, oh, this broke me, this was so awful, this really got to me. And so I was waiting. I was like, okay, am I gonna cry? And I did not care. We had not spent enough time with that horse.
Aw.
All of you are being way over dramatic. We did not spend enough time with
You
that
didn't
horse to
watch it
care.
as a kid. You
Which
watched a horse die as a kid, and you see Atreyu freaking out about it, and you freak out about it, man.
I
That
think
horse did not need to die. The
I
horse was depressed and into the swamps of despair.
I
That's
think okay,
terrible.
but added bonus of it doesn't matter. The horse comes back to life in the end.
Well, yeah, because everybody comes back to life at the
Yeah, because
end. That's like
magic.
saying nobody's death impacted you.
Uh, no, no, no. That's not how
Yeah.
that. No, it's not. That's
To
not.
say the horse dying doesn't matter means that nobody's death mattered.
In this movie, yes, no one's death mattered because they all came back to
But
life.
you weren't emotionally impacted by any of it?
I was emotionally impacted by Atreyu's like emotional reaction to the world falling around him as he doesn't understand what the Empress is saying, because I've had an entire journey I've spent with Atreyu and I'm watching the world fall apart.
Okay.
I don't know what's going to happen, and that is really dope. The horse dying, I don't care. I spent 3 minutes with that horse. If you move some things around and put something like that or killed the horse in a different way towards the end, I think that would hurt more and hurt good. And then you could have that emotional connection. That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
Um,
You could be right.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I disagree with the idea that it doesn't emotionally impact, especially a kid. But I do feel like had it been paced later in the film, we would have felt it more. I agree.
I suppose. But I do think it would be better if it was later. Beyond that, my only like, I have like a handful of nitpicks, but like who doesn't? The one that stands out is little Atreyu he screams a lot, but that's kind of his thing. So I guess I can't really hate on him for that, but it gets a little loud now and then. If I want to look at this from a realistic point of view, just for a second, I would have maybe written that the little boy runs away from the bullies and ends up home, and his dad is like a weird collector and he's up in that. To say that that kid stays in the school's attic for like 10 hours, well past when school will be out, is a little strange. But
I love it.
Okay. I only feel
okay, the reason I like it is because I guess it's similar to things I did as a kid, where like
hung out in the school's attic?
I'd technically be in the place where I was supposed to be, but I was never really where I was supposed to be when I could get like a break. If I had a book I wanted to read and I was at camp, I would find a corner or a room somewhere that was very unused, and I would just hang out in that room and read the book. It's like a life experience, common event for me.
Okay.
And the fact that the kid would hang out in the school's attic and just read a book, that's very. Not only would just kids do that in general if they had access to the school's attic, that's all. Like the way that he does it is very obsessed book nerd, which is important to the story. You know, like he's gonna find some weird corner that's clearly not taken care of, that's peaceful. He's gonna hide there, which part of the story is that he hides from things. He's gonna hide there, and he's going to read the book. Like,
fair enough.
I don't know. I also kind of love that it was in a school, because schools are a place of learning, but not always a place of imagination. True. And you can kind of like say that there's a relational connection between the fact that he's reading in secret in the school's attic rather than being in class where he's supposed to be to keep his feet on the ground, per se. I don't know. There's something fun there.
Fair enough. I guess I'm being nitpicky. Back to positives. No, I lied. His dad sucks, and he's drinking raw eggs. That man's a madman. Gross. Don't like that at all.
I felt like that was intentional to back up the fact that like nobody really enjoys drinking raw eggs, but he's doing it for a health reason. Everyone always does that for a health reason. It's him keeping his feet on the ground. It's a character choice.
Sure. No, that's all good and fine, but I think that's. I don't care what time period you're in. There's no way that's healthy. Drinking raw egg.
A lot of people
are raw.
drink, like crack an egg and drink it in the morning. It's
Are
supposed to be
raw.
like a health thing.
I'm tired of getting shit for eating raw cookie dough because there's raw egg in it. But then there's people walking around
Absolutely.
drinking raw egg. You're a nut. Anyway, yeah. What are some of your like initial positives? What is it that you love about this movie? You've seen more than once.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that this movie is bizarre. Like, it doesn't really. It definitely has your classic, I guess, quest structure, but it's almost like the quest structure is hiding what's really happening. Which is that, of course, Atreyu has to go on the quest. But the reason he has to go on the quest is not so much to accomplish a thing or to get a secret key or, a special herb or learn a magic or anything like that. The reason he goes on the quest is so that the kid who's reading, Bastian, can bond with him. And then at the end of the quest, the reason he's accomplished his task is not because he necessarily succeeded on any things he set out to do, but because he has created a bond with this kid that's reading the stories. And that is what allows the world of Fantasia to continue to exist, is the bond between the imagination and the story and the reader in the real world. And I also love they slip in a very quick fourth wall break. They're like, there have been people who are following Bastion too.
That freaked me out. I was like, wait a minute, wait, what? Huh? I started looking around. I was looking out the window. I was like, what? Like, I was in it. I was fully invested at that point. So I was like, yeah, there's other people. I was like, wait, huh? What? So that was cool.
It's you. She's talking about you.
Yeah, that was cool.
Which it's a really fun thing to do when you're talking about the fact that, like, if Fantasia is the world of man's imagination, the only way that it would be able to exist is if it has a constant connection with the real world, with the mind of a person in general. And this world seems to suggest that the NeverEnding Story, the book, is Fantasia's magical tether to the real world, and there has to be like a caretaker or whatever who mentally bonds the human reality to that reality. All that's super fun. What's really fun about all that is that it's very transparently also what kind of literally happens with imagination and storytelling. Like, this is one of the situations where it's a story about stories, and it just kind of tells the truth through fiction, in the sense that, what is the Grimork's line where he's like, people who have no hopes are easy to control, and those who have control have the power. And so the nothing is eating away at people's hopes and dreams, which means they're easier to control and manipulate, which means life gets awful and there's nothing to it. But if you imagine and you allow the fantasy world to exist, which is inherently oxymoronic, fantasy to exist, then you have a richer, healthier world. It makes a genuine improvement on the people around you. And that's what fantasy and storytelling is all about, is about capturing those immaterial things that don't exist to create a better reality, or at least to live a brighter life. There's a similar bit in Hogfather, I believe, a story by Terry Pratchett, I think. And they basically say something to the extent of, human beings have to imagine things that don't exist so that they can exist one day. Things like justice and, hope and equality. Those things that don't exist have to be imagined to be created. And I think this is doing that same idea, just in a more simple way, or maybe a less mature way. Just sort of like, kids need to be able to imagine things. People need to be able to imagine things in order for the world to be better. And if you look back, like, as you rewatch it, everything that happens in the movie is directly connected to that idea. The fact that Atreyu keeps failing but keeps trying, the swamps of sadness being, if you let the sadness take you, you just sink. The fact that, what's the ancient one's name?
The ancient one? Is that just the ancient one?
Morla,
Oh,
the turtle.
yeah.
Yeah, Morla the turtle, the ancient one, whatever. She's existed for forever, and she lives in the swamps of sadness. So she doesn't really see any change or anything positive. She's like, it doesn't really matter what you do, and it's not possible to get anything done. And then the luck dragon shows up and saves Atreyu, and it's like, actually, we can do this if you just keep trying. A little bit of luck will find your way, and we can do this. I don't know. I also really like the fact that Atreyu is persistent as a character, but he's also pretty humble. He gets what he's confident enough to get what he needs to be done. He doesn't like sit around and hem and haw, but he also is very open to learning new things and getting sort of like what he needs from other people. He's not like, just give me a sword and I'll fight the nothing. He's like, I need to learn what I've been told to try and accomplish this quest to save the Empress and to save the world. I don't know. It's cool. I also first time noticing this because I watched it as an adult. Surprisingly diverse for a fantasy movie from the 80s. Almost every character is a character of color.
I'm curious. Do you know is the little boy? What's his name? Bastion. Is his mother supposed to be indigenous?
I don't know if Bastion's mother is supposed to be indigenous, but I know that the guy that got to play Atreyu, he looks very white, but he actually is part native.
See, I think it's interesting that Bastion reacts to Atreyu when he arrives in the book, and he looks at his patch on the bag, and I'm picking up as an audience member. It seems like he has a connection to the story. He's like influencing it, perhaps, maybe, I don't know. But he also mentioned that he read The Last of the Mohicans, and maybe that's just a story he likes. But then in the end, he says the name for the Empress. Earlier in the movie, he says he would use his mom's name, and his mom's name is Moonchild. Is that like?
I don't know if we're supposed to know what her name is. Like, even the subtitles didn't capture it.
Well, it's just because the little Bastion, he says, I would give her my mom's name. And then when he screams the name in the end, he says Moonchild. Is that his mom's name?
I guess that's possible. I didn't realize that maybe we went that far. I thought it was as simple as like The Last of the Mohicans is a book that's kind of the, I guess, front man for a whole bunch of westerns that highlight like Native Americans. They would have said Indians. There's a whole genre of Western stories surrounding the native cultures or expansions of the West into native territories. And that was a very, very popular historical fiction genre for adventurous kids to read. It would kind of been that era sci-fi. I don't necessarily think that it was meant to be a family connection between him and Atreyu or like a heritage bloodline connection so much as it was, this is a kid who has read stories about Native Americans, obviously has liked them. He's got a sticker on his bag. Right. And so he imagines a hero to be of that people. It's also would be really cool if he is Native American. I have never caught his mom's name. Moonchild is possible from what he yells out the window, but I don't think you're supposed to know. Does anyone say? Like, did you just sort of like hear that?
I just remember that when he reads the part where it's like Atreyu is told that he has to give the Empress a new name, and it like cuts back to Bastion reading, and it's like, I know what name I would give her. My mom's name. She had the prettiest name. And then he just gets back to reading. So it was like, okay, they're holding on to that. It's going to be weird at the end when he screams something like Jennifer, but it ends up being this really cool magical thing. But I can't imagine, unless she's like a hippie, you know, I feel like it's got to be one or the other. So I was going to Google it.
Oh, I just did. Oh. It is Moonchild. The movie leaves it open to interpretation, but the book specifically says Moonchild. So they probably had him yell Moonchild and tried to cover it up with audio, and you were just good enough that you heard it.
So wait, you aren't supposed to hear the name that they give the Empress? Like, he screams it in the one I saw. Like, it wasn't hidden at all.
Well, you're not supposed to hear it, but there's supposed to be enough thunder and wind that you don't like get the audio of him yelling it. Like, you can kind of hear that he is yelling, but you're not supposed to be able to hear.
Oh, I heard it. I thought
what's
that was
said.
Interesting. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Okay.
Well, cool
That actually,
beans.
that's cool. All the way around. That's cool.
All right. Do you have any negatives regarding this film? I kind of had some of my own that I already mentioned.
I do dislike the end where he can ride the dragon into the real world and chase his bullies.
I was
I feel
torn.
like that breaks a lot of rules. Like I'm pretty 50-50 on it. Like I actually my note is 50-50 because I like the justice, I guess, of him chasing his bullies with the dragon is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But it violates a lot of sort of like what I would expect the rules around it to be. Like so much of the story is Atreyu and Bastian accidentally coming face to face through the nature of the connection that they're forming,
Mm-hmm.
and then to suggest that Bastian can just wish the luck dragon into the real world would suggest that like, hey, other people who have bonded to the book before have probably also been able to do stuff like that, but they just stopped for some reason. Um, like I don't know, if you're gonna allow things from Fantasia into the real world
Mm-hmm.
directly, you're gonna mess up the metaphor that's reality, and you're also like the metaphor in the sense of like it's not really a metaphor, it's what they're saying right now about imagination being necessary for humans to have better lives is legitimately true. But if we're going to go ahead and say that we can just imagine a dragon into reality, it kind of messes with the fact that we're actually talking about genuinely true things. I don't know.
I guess I can appreciate the story and commentary, not commentary, analysis on the importance of imagination and the slow burn of realizing Bastion's connection to Atreyu is dope. But I am
Mm-hmm.
one to I don't always appreciate the open ended of was it real or was the kid just crazy because he's 9 and maybe his imagination got
Mm-hmm.
carried away. The fact that we see the bullies running into the dumpster because this little child is on a dragon is amazing and I love it. Because you could also, because it's the never ending story, and Fantasia seems to have this kind of Matrix style reset every couple of years potentially. You could say,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's Bigfoot and Mothman and vampires and aliens and wizards and witches and unicorns and mermaids and every other magical creature that ever happened because it's human imagination connecting to literature and then it bleeds over into our worlds and the barriers get thinner and thinner every time someone reads it and boom, and it kicks ass. I like it.
See, I like that, but then you are creating straight up fiction with the rules rather than reality. Like in the sense, like what's cool about this right now, the what's cool about the Neverending Story, the book, connecting a human person to Fantasia, is that it creates a reality in where like fiction and fantasy and imagination is legit and true. Bastian's ability to make wishes and bring them to life is a key essential element of the reality of this fantasy world. But to allow real fantasy things to immediately cross the border into our world is something that is literally never going to happen. That forces us into pure like it I think it fictionalizes the point they're trying to make in a way that I don't think helps the point. They're trying to say, even if the fantasy, like Fantasia itself, is not legitimately true and real, everything about our connection to our imaginations, which Fantasia stands in for, is real and true. And the moment we start allowing it to become more and more fantastic, we start delegitimizing the message, I think, a little bit. Or at least we're telling a different story.
That sounds like a muggle mentality. Suggesting that what happens in the never-ending story can never happen in the real world is very limited, very Susan coded, I would say. Narnia reference.
Wow!
Yeah,
Are you trying to lock me out of Narnia
yeah.
right
No, I think you've locked yourself out of Narnia because you said it's not possible for a quote-unquote fictional world. Thus, the ending of Neverending Story
This
thus
is sitting
implies,
right
thus
next to me,
implies,
all right?
thus
Don't even
implies,
challenge
thus,
me in Narnia.
thus implies that this is not fiction, but in fact reality, and it's the limited,
All right.
dull-minded, office-working humans that have put the magic aspect of the world into little boxes and corner it off into pocket universes, and they say it's fiction, but it's not. You know what's really funny about this, audience members? What's really funny about this is that I'm an atheist and Mac is a Christian, and we are fully arguing the opposite points right now. This is really good stuff.
Oh, the human mind.
Believe in magic, you muggle.
Complexities. No, it would be cool. And this is one of those things where I feel like what the book has to say about this sort of thing would be really interesting and relevant to the point that the author was originally trying to make. I don't know what the book does. My guess is this feels like a very cinematic moment. My guess is the book maintains rules of division between the two worlds. Probably. But I don't know. I could be wrong. I feel very torn about the end scene. I love the justice on the bullies, but I feel like it really kind of it simplifies the themes that the movie is doing in a way that I don't feel like the rest of the story deserves.
I think there's also you mentioned something before about, was it this or the previous week's episode where the creator of the book didn't like the movie and had creative differences? And
that's this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's possible this ending didn't even happen in the book. And
no, they straight up say the end is the main difference between the two, so it's fairly likely that like the whole like yelling the name out the window might not even be a real thing in the book. I imagine the naming thing is still real and legit, but the actual process on how it happened might be different.
I think if I were to if I were to accept that magic exists in this world, but also go off of what's most probable, assuming the ending is changed, I would be more willing to bet the book isn't a connection to anything. It's a magical item that creates a story out of the heart and imagination of whoever reads it. And that's why there's connections to Bastion as it goes, but it's not actually, like, there's not a world that it connects to. So I don't know if that helps or hinders the imaginary commentary, but I just think that's more likely than it being a connection to a world.
A legitimate parallel world.
Right.
I think the storm that happens in the real world is supposed to be symptomatic of imagination dying.
Yeah.
But it could be just coincidence. That's a possibility. Yeah. Which is fun, actually. I love all of that. I think I don't know. The point that the Grimoire makes about the wolf makes about how he works for the nothing, and I find that really interesting. Not just in the very direct sense that people with no hope are easy to control, therefore people in power want you to have no hope so that you'll just do what you're told, rather than trying to make whatever world you imagine. I think all that's really cool. But I also love the level it plays on, the fact that Grimoire is inherently self-destructive. He exists as a desire by people who are in power to destroy other people's hopes and dreams. He exists to destroy the world in which he has been created by. Like, he's been created by somebody's desire and imagination. So he exists in the world of Fantasia, which is a world that only creates things of wishes. And his job is to bring down the existence of human imagination and dreams, one of which he is. And the movie doesn't really get into all that, but I think it is aware of all that. The way that Grimoire sort of discusses what he is and what he wants, it feels like he's aware of the sort of irony that exists in his creation in that world. And then I don't know. I think that's really interesting. I wonder if the book does more with that, because we really don't get enough with
it'd be cool if there's more of a confrontation between. But I think I was going to say it would be cool if there's a confrontation regarding that exact dilemma. But Atreyu would have to know he's in a story in order to have that, which we can't have. So. Good.
Well, and I think the confrontation between the two of them is interesting, I think, simply in that the Grimoire, his whole thing is let people have no hope. And Atreyu encounters Grimork when he really shouldn't have any hope, and yet he still confronts him and fights him and comes out on top. And because he does that, the Luck Dragon, Falkor, is able to find him, and they are able to ultimately get back to the Empress and save the day. Which I think is really important to note, that Atreyu doesn't think there's any way to win at that point.
Yeah.
He's like, I've lost the magic necklace I got, which has a name, but I've forgotten what it is. I've lost the magic necklace. I've lost my luck dragon. I can't get to the borders of Fantasia. This Grimoire just told me that there are no borders to Fantasia, so there's literally no way to get to this human child to get a name for the Empress, which means that the Nothing is going to destroy the world. And yet he still fights the Grimoire, which allows him to get to the Empress, which allows them to save the world. You know, like this constant fighting in the face of defeat. Even I think the test in getting to the Oracle, where like you have to know your value, which I'm not really sure they fully explain that. Like, do you have to be aware of your weaknesses or aware of your strengths or aware of both? Like, do you have to be proud of yourself, or is it more about just like knowing yourself? I'm not sure.
The way Miracle Max explained it at first made me think that people who went through who were overly confident were the ones that died. And then when Atreyu got there and started doubting himself, then he was like, no, be confident. So at first I was like, oh, I got this, because I don't think I'm all that worthwhile. But that probably means that I'm underplaying it, if I'm being realistic. So I'd be fine. But then he gets there and he's like, oh no, you have to be confident, and you have to know your worth. It's like, oh well, fucking shit. Which is it?
Well, I think the message is actually literally that knowing your worth is something that is really, really difficult, if not impossible to do. The fact that he gets through the test, even though he technically fails it according to the eyes of the statues, it kind of communicates a fake it till you make it mentality. Like, you may not know exactly what you're worth or exactly what your ability is, but you got to keep going anyway. You know, like, you may not stand somebody's test of you, but if you just push through, you get to where you need to be, and you can still like save the day, I guess. Which is, I think, a more effective message to teach people, rather than spend all your time worrying about whether or not you have a perfect understanding about yourself before you do anything, you know?
Yep, understandable. Totally fair.
That scene was one of the scenes that I had nightmares about. Again,
really?
Going back to the fact that every one of these, it was so alien, and like the death so extreme, and the key so mysterious, that I think I just sort of like fixated on it, and my subconscious played it out a couple of times. I died several times to those things.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Okay. That's right.
I don't know. My kid brain was playing it out, trying to figure it out.
Was there any reason that Falkor couldn't just fly him over it?
Not that I saw. No, he decided he wanted to challenge himself, I guess.
Okay, good for him.
Yeah, that's one of the weaknesses in the plot, is the storybook simplicity of a lot of these things. Like the Luck Dragon being both a function of Atreyu's perseverance and also just like lucky sometimes. Which in reality, that's kind of how it happens. Like, you have to persevere in order to occasionally get lucky, but it also is very convenient for the plot when Falkor can and cannot find Atreyu, so.
Yeah. Anyway, little note. I do like the weird array of characters in the beginning. I did take a second to realize what was happening, though, because it kind of felt like the opening of the Grand Budapest Hotel at first, where it was like, is this a story within a story within a story? Because we spend about 5 minutes getting to know these characters that we never technically see again. So I was a little confused.
Well, we see the Rockbiter again.
Yeah,
and
but
we see the see them all again.
Yeah, but not
like,
really.
I don't know.
Not in the way that they're like the crew that comes in at the last minute to save Atreyu or something. You know, it's not like that. But it was cool. I like the guy that flies around on the bat. The super speedy snail is interesting. There's fun to be had. I love
the racing snail.
Yes. There's fun to be had with our array of silly characters.
I do think it's a really good, I guess, scene setting like scene. You know, like we've start with this kid in the real world dealing with very real world problems, and then he starts reading this book, and we get a bit of narration to sort of like bridge us over between the two worlds. So we do as an audience kind of follow what's happening. But the immediate richness of the fantasy and the fact that we get characters that are kind of learning about each other as they're learning about the problems of Fantasia, I think all of that really works as a sort of introductory scene to the story that's going to be happening in Fantasia. We get to meet three very different characters who all have three very different means of transportation, who are all dealing with the same problem, all going to the same place. When we get there, the person who's supposed to be able to solve their problem is dying because of the problem. So like I feel like it all works pretty well. On a rewatch, it's actually really cool to see how Bastian's influence on the story impacts things. Like I'm not really sure how things would be necessarily with another reader, but I think it's clear by the time you get introduced to Atreyu on like a rewatch that Bastian is having an influence on the story, because like Atreyu is supposed to be this great warrior, and it turns out it's just a kid. You know, and I think even that was a surprise to Bastian, because he was looking at like a full-grown guy on a horse on a sticker, and then it turns out it's just a kid. That's the subconscious connection between Bastian connection with the book having an impact on the world, and the more conscious one is his connection, like the fact that it's a native hero is, I believe, something that Bastian kind of pushes on the book, but the fact that it's a kid is something the book is using to connect to Bastian. I don't know, all that's really fun. The kind of like intricacies and subtleties and all that's fun.
Very true. Do they ever specify that Atreyu is not a human?
Not really. I think you're supposed to assume that nobody in this world is human, and the fact that Atreyu and the Empress look human is just kind of a coincidence slash a way to connect with the real world, maybe.
Okay, fair enough. Just because it was like, oh, we need a human child. It's like, okay, are you not a human child? I don't see any pointy ears or goat feet.
My guess is, well, I guess it doesn't really matter because it's a world of imagination and not of science. I was going to say, maybe morbidly, if you were to like dissect Atreyu, he would be human. Ugh. But if you like that doesn't really matter, because like I was going to go the route of like nobody who would be technically human in Fantasia would use the word human because they don't know about the real world. And so it's more of a historical world difference than it is a biological difference. But it's actually more of just an existential difference in the sense that all the creatures of Fantasia are of imagination, and therefore none of them would be human per se, I guess.
I think it would it would immediately be fixed if the Empress or the turtle or whoever said Earth Child instead of human child.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know, I kind of like the distinction though, like the fact that even though he looks human, he is inherently not human, you know.
I guess, but then we'll get into a lot of weird specifics and ridiculously, because you make the connection of like, if you were to dissect you, he'd basically be human.
But like, I don't know if there would be anything.
Right, but so if we ignore the book and we operate under the rules presented in the movie, these two worlds do exist and they can cross over. So what is it about Atreyu, the Empress, and other people like them that's going to be not human? Do they have? Is it like like with Harry Potter, in which case there's a genetic difference between wizards and muggles, but they're still all human beings. Like they never say that it's wizards versus humans. They're all humans. So like what's the issue here, Atreyu? What's the issue, dude? What's going on? What's the deal? Earthchild. Because the name is Moonchild. It's this thing that you can see but you can't touch. There's a connection there.
That's interesting.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
It's also worth noting that this movie is created by a German director who did mostly things for German TV, and there is a German version of this movie that has like a different soundtrack and everything. I think it's mostly the same, but like slightly different edit is essentially the idea. Um, and I wonder if maybe that has an influence on any of like the naming conventions or whatever. Like I kind of doubt. English was obviously fluently used in the creation of this film. I am not insulting any of the language used at all, but maybe just the fact that English was not necessarily this guy's first language maybe had something to do with the slight oddness of the way that was phrased. Or maybe it's very intentional that it is human and not Earth, and they're trying to distinguish between reality and Fantasia, you know? I don't know.
Interesting.
Reality is a hard word to use when we're talking about Fantasia, which is a world that genuinely exists.
Right.
I don't have a better way to put it right now. Real world, Bastion's world, I guess.
Fair enough. The magical world.
The magical world would be Fantasia, which we have a name for.
Okay, fair enough. Do you know if there's a continuation of this?
Yeah, there are 2 sequels. I have never watched either of them. According to the Wikipedia page, the second one loosely follows the second half of the book that got ignored in this first movie, but is even worse at communicating the themes, from what I understand. And it's like a total recast. You don't see anybody from before.
Bummer.
They use the same character, like Sebastian running around, but it's like a completely new kid in the sweater hoodie running around in Fantasia. Yeah, it's a little weird. I think it gets more of a Narnia, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory vibes, where it's like very normal person goes into fantastic world and deals with fantastic world problems directly, rather than being like this cool layered thing. So I don't know how I feel about it. I would watch it maybe if I were convinced, but like I'm so worried about it messing up what I like about the NeverEnding Story that I kind of don't want to do it.
You want your NeverEnding Story to end.
I want it to cycle beautifully, and I'm afraid that the sequel will mess it up. The third one is admittedly just a complete freestyle. They did their own thing entirely for the third one.
Weird.
Well, because they ran out of book. They used the first half and then the second half, and then.
Well, anything else you have to add? 'Cause, like, for me, I don't have anything to shit on. I just liked it, and it's a kids movie, and it's rare that you have like a whole lot to get into when it's good. Definitely a whale from my perspective.
Okay.
I would watch it again.
I feel like The Nothing was not scary enough. I remember it being terrifying as a kid. I think there might have been things that were cut in my version that I watched, or maybe I just imagined it wrong. But I remember early in the movie, there being scenes of darkness tearing apart the world and chasing characters. And not all of them made it. But maybe I made that up. It just wasn't in the version that I saw.
Interesting.
This is the problem with digital versions, guys. Yeah. I don't know if they're making changes.
I'm familiar with this concept, of course. I kept waiting for there to be like some sort of, because it's a wolf that we have. I thought maybe there was going to be like a bigger version up in the clouds. It was going to be like a Lilith from Loki. I mean, a Lilith would be, more based on this. But I was waiting for that, and there wasn't that. So yeah, in the end, the Nothing was kind of bland.
Yeah, no, I remember. Maybe I made it up. It's totally possible I made it up. Like I said, I've had multiple dreams about this movie, and so maybe I just sort of like animated some stuff in my brain. But I remember there being scenes of like a void of wind coming in and ripping down like plants and trees, and dirt was breaking up and things were falling apart into this void that you couldn't see anything in. So it was like a shadow that was eating the landscape, and it was chasing some of our characters. But it just didn't happen.
Huh. I vaguely remember our rock, bat, and snail rider dealing with something like that, but I don't know how personified the cloud was in the end. I don't think
and like it didn't have like a face or anything, but it was like, 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 it was the nothing was genuinely like eating up the world. And in the version that I saw today, which is potentially the only version ever, and I've just added things to it, it was like a storm in the sky that got really windy and dangerous and was tearing things up a little bit. But then by the time Atreyu came to, everything was just apart. Like there was more ripping and tearing and falling apart in my memory than there was in the film.
Interesting. I'll have to do some research there.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, anything else to add? I mean, we have more time, but I did like it. I think it'd be cool to explore more of this world.
The bookkeeper, Coriander, the way he tricked him into taking the book.
That sneaky, was fun. That sneaky turd. That was good. I was really hoping that was the case. I was waiting for like a grin. It was like, you can't read this. It's not allowed. Because I was thinking, okay, this is either perfect, and he's gonna steal it. He's supposed to read it, or this is like the haunted mask, and he is telling this kid not to take it, and he's gonna take it anyway, and it's gonna unleash hell. But it ended up being the first one. So good stuff all around.
No, I liked that he kind of like gave the kid a test first, then he was like, this might be the one, you know, like obviously we don't get any of the bookkeeper's mindset or, you know, internal monologue, but we definitely get enough to see that he's like, I don't like kids. I don't want anybody bothering me. And then this kid's like, but I've read all these good books.
I've read
and he's
all
like, okay, so your imagination is good. Are you interested in this book? And then he is interested, and then he does the thing that makes all kids even more interested, which is outlaw it.
It's forbidden.
And you cannot have this book. It is too dangerous. And then I love that Bashti left a note.
Yes.
Don't worry, I'll return your book.
I thought it was interesting. It caught me off guard. I had to remember the sentiment when he's like, my video games are called books, so this rectangle thing is called books. And it's funny because I exist in my world, even in my, you know, screen ridden life. I exist in a time where book talk is a thing. Like there's a huge appreciation for books, you know, for people our generation. At least there are demographics in which there's massive appreciation of books. I live in a city with a bunch of big bookstores, one of which is a huge tourist attraction, and I live right next to the library. So like, I love books, even though I'm not great at reading. So it was weird to remember that this sentiment has existed all the way back, you know, forever. But it's extra weird to think it was 1984, and I was like, dude, you have no idea what's coming. Just appreciate what you have for now, because it's just gonna get worse, I would imagine. But it was funny.
No, there were a lot of people back when cinema was becoming more and more popular, and then video games and all this stuff, like kids stopped reading because it required effort. I think he even mentions it like in one of his lines. He's like, you have to participate in reading. It's not something you can just sit back and like let happen to you. And it's funny because the science actually backs him up. And I happen to know a little bit about like reading science and, you know, what happens in the brain when you read versus when you watch something. And it's very true that your brain is far more active when you are reading than when you are watching something. And a lot of that just has to do with the fact that reading is like it's mental work. You have to interpret what's happening in front of you as well as imagine what's happening in like according to the words that you are interpreting in front of you. So there's a lot going on. But I think that means that books are not just harder ways to communicate, but they are inherently more complex ways to communicate. They allow for the mind to create. It's a partnership almost. When I'm watching a movie, I'm getting what's given to me. I might be able to fill in some gaps. I might be able to participate in some literary criticism. I might be able to sort of pick up on the metaphors and whatnot. So there's still some cognitive work going in, but largely what's happening on a screen is what's happening in the story. There's not a lot of gray area. When I'm reading a book, I am actively participating in the world building process and in the story process. When it says the character is angry, I get to interpret what that looks like. When it says that the ballroom was fantastic and grand, I fill in that space. You know, there's a lot more reader participation and imagination that kicks in when you're reading a book. And obviously this story is going to be really important that the reader is doing those things. Like the NeverEnding Story as a movie does a really good job of sharing with the viewer the experience of, like, you have to be reading the book to really buy into what's going on. You have to be imagining things like this kid is imagining things. The number of times they cut to Bastion literally just so you can see him reposition himself and like get into like the reading like posture. Dude, and not only is it cute, I see myself in him.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have done that exact thing. I've flopped around on my elbows trying to get settled. I've pulled the blanket up over my head. I've, kept my lighting source close so I can see the page better. There's just, reading is a unique experience, and I feel like out of all the films I've seen that try to appreciate fantasy and story, this is the one film that best captures what reading is like, and that's pretty cool.
That's good stuff. I now feel guilty that I watched it and have never read the book. It's the same with Fahrenheit 451.
Fahrenheit 451's movies aren't good, so you should definitely read the book.
The first one is okay. I really like the ending. They didn't have that in the book, and I really like the ending. It's bad. Anyway, I'd say that's good point. In the end, you'd say it's a whale?
Absolutely.
Good stuff. This has been my favorite one so far for this marathon.
I don't know if it's going to get any better. I think Inkheart is very similar to this, so you might like it, but it has less intricacies to it.
Is Inkheart the one with Brendan Fraser?
Mm-hmm.
I might love that one the most then.
Yeah, Brendan Fraser.
It's Brendan. And depending on the council's decision in the end, if we add a certain movie to the end of this marathon, that might be my favorite, because that one, I know.
What a cop-out to love the one you're already a fan of.
I'm sorry. Okay, I was just saying, I'm open to it. I haven't seen that movie in years. It could be awful. I don't recall.
That's possible.
It's the concept
we should watch
that
it.
I love. We'll see. But that's us. Bye, everybody. Bye. Bye.
Bye.